We're the only house that will affect. But there's things. I just wondered if you would. Okay. But they will talk. They will do everything they can. Noise and trash.
I would say, how are you? Hey, good. How are you?
Like that is that is my bedroom, right?
No,
and nobody was trucks in there waking you up. You know what I mean? Today?
Besides just what he said.
Well, yeah, he seems like he was willing to do. So when they approve this RH, there's no way you guys can come back to
Well, we're not planning to, you know. I mean, obviously, I guess nothing's preventing us from coming back. But I might not.
Thank you. Congratulations. Well.
Next year, there's better relationships. Yeah, I know. I didn't know for sure if you could go there. Yeah, I didn't know anything. So we're supposed to go plan and then see how to perform. I know.
All right, we'd like to welcome everyone this evening to Mapleton City Council on Wednesday, November 6, 2019. We'll begin with an invocation by Councilman Carlson and a pledge of allegiance by Councilman Hansen.
Our Father in heaven, as we come before thee this time, we express appreciation and gratitude for the many blessings that we have enjoyed, especially for the privilege that it is to live in this beautiful town, in this beautiful area. We pray this evening that we each may use wisdom, discernment, and our questions and those things we deliberate upon and discuss as a city. We also pray that we may do those things which be for the best good of all of our futures. We pray for those in need. We pray for our country. We pray for all those who need thy influence in their lives. These things we ask in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll now move to public forum. We have one individual that signed up. Kent Millington here is with the UTA, and we'll turn a few minutes over to him. Thanks for being here, Kent.
Absolutely, Mayor. Thank you. Mayor, council members, thanks for allowing me this opportunity to introduce myself and UTA's activities here in Utah County. You may remember that the state legislature about a year and a half ago changed the structure of the governance of UTA. and established a board of trustees, 3 full-time board members that are responsible for the operation of UTA. I am the board member that represents Utah and Tooele counties. Carlton Christensen is the chair of the board, and he used to be a city council member in Salt Lake for many years. And Beth Holbrook from Bountiful is the other board member, and she represents the 3 northern counties. What I want to do tonight is just to introduce to you what we're currently doing to expand our operations and consider the expanding of operations here in Utah County. Currently, we don't service here in your city. We service nearby, but we're actively in the process of considering what to do to accommodate the growth that's happening in the south end of Utah County. I happen to live on the north end of Utah County that has exploded in the last few years, and so I sympathize with you or congratulate you on the growth you're about to experience, because we've gone through it the last several years on the north end of the county. Just to state to you some of the success we've had, you may be aware that we instituted a bus rapid transit system in Orem and Provo just last year that services from the Orem Front Runner Station through UVU, up around BYU, and to Provo Front Runner Station. When we instituted that bus rapid transit last year, we were averaging about 10,000 riders a day. Currently, we're pushing 14,000 a day. And so that means something like 7,000 or 8,000 cars that are not floating around Orem and Provo. Both universities have told us, for example, that that they have sold about 1,500 fewer parking passes at both campuses this year because of the arrangement we have with the 2 schools. One of the things that we're currently doing is to look at instituting that kind of a bus rapid transit system down State Street, down 89, from Provo to Lehigh. But part of that consideration is to think about the extension of that bus rapid transit system down 89 to come through your city. And so that's not going to happen tomorrow, but as you continue to grow here, that demand will be present. And we want you to know that we're anxious to visit with you about the service that may need to come into your city to service the needs as you continue to grow. We will be having meetings with the Springville and Spanish Fork and Payson mayors and city managers next week to consider the extension of Front Runner from Provo to Payson to serve the expansion that's happening down in Payson with the 2 universities, MTech and UVU, growing down there. That will have a tangential influence here in Mapleton, of course. And so we want you to be aware of what we're doing. We'll keep you informed. And if you've got questions of me, I can be found. I represent Utah and Tooele counties, so I represent you on the board. And so I'm willing to answer any of your questions, take your comments, your criticisms, and whatever else may come. I'm available to do all of that because I represent you on the board. And I want you to know that we are concerned about the growth in the south end of the county. And we're looking right now, we need to start planning what we would do as this growth continues. So thank you for allowing me to come and give you a brief report, let me introduce myself as representing Utah County, and let you know that we're anxious to work with you any way that we can and answer your questions.
Kent, thank you very much. Is there any questions for Kent? Thanks a lot for the
Mayor,
information.
thank you very much.
Appreciate
for the
it.
opportunity. Thank
All
you very much.
There's no one else that has signed up on public forum, but if you'd like to speak, you can come forward now. Seeing if there are not any, we'll move forward and look for a motion. Begin the agenda with the consent agenda and look for a motion to approve the consent agenda if there are any questions.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as set forth on the public agenda, the 4 items.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Nelson, a second by Councilman Hansen.
Hansen, yes.
Carlson, yes.
Nelson, yes.
Lundberg, yes.
Great. Yeah, so for the record, I failed to mention Councilman Jonathan Reid is not present, and so excluded from that agenda, or from the meeting, essentially. All right, we'll move on to item number 5. It's consideration of an ordinance approving amendment to the general plan from shopping center commercial to rural residential, and rural residential to shopping center commercial and medium density residential, and an amendment to the zoning from general commercial, neighborhood commercial, and agricultural residential, and residential agriculture for 18.5 acres located at approximately 1600 south and 1600 west, and a review of a concept plan that includes a grocery store and a residential development. And I'll also mention that for the record that Councilman Member Reid is obviously not here tonight, but is submitting a written disclosure indicating that he has a financial interest in the project. Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So this parcel is about 18.5 acres in size. It has frontage on 1600 South and Highway 89, both of which are UDOT-controlled roads. The general plan currently has a shopping center commercial designation on the east and a rural residential designation on the west. Zoning includes general commercial, neighborhood commercial, A2, and A2 with the TDR overlay, so it's a little bit of a mix. The Valley View Estates and Rawlings subdivisions are located to the south and west. When those subdivisions were originally approved, they were in the A2 zone, but you may recall last year that they were rezoned to RA1 because some of the property owners had a desire to subdivide those larger lots down to a minimum, or excuse me, a maximum of, or a minimum, excuse me, 1 acre. This is the subject site, the aerial. You see 1600 south on the top and 89 on the right side. If you look back on the screen back here, so this is the existing general plan. You see there's a lot going on in this area. The shopping center commercial is the brown. The rural residential is the green that you see. The purple is low density residential. The yellow is medium density residential, and the orange is high density residential. So right now this is the subject site with shopping center and rural residential. And then the zoning, as I mentioned, they've got general commercial, neighborhood commercial, A2, and then the A2 with the TDR overlay. The Planning Commission, when they held their public hearing, at the time the applicant was proposing the following. They were proposing to maintain the shopping center commercial designation, but to rezone all of the commercial area to general commercial to GC1. And then on the western portion, they were requesting a high-density residential general plan designation and an R2B zone. And they were the concept plan they submitted included a grocery store on the commercial parcel and a mix of single-family detached and twin homes on the residential. As you can see from the minutes and the correspondence that's included in the packet, there was significant concern with many of the neighboring residents, particularly with the residential component and the higher density that was being proposed on that site. The Planning Commission was supportive of the commercial component of the project, but was not supportive of the high-density proposal. And so what they recommended was to amend the general plan to medium-density residential and the zoning to RA2, with the condition that the lots that buffered those existing subdivision lots were approximately a half acre in size. The Commission's primary basis for that was in the general plan. There really is a tiered approach where you go from low density typically to medium density before you get to the higher density zones, and so they felt that this recommendation most closely followed what the existing pattern in the general plan is. So after the Planning Commission hearing, the applicant took the direction of the council or the Planning Commission and has revised their proposal to basically match what the Planning Commission had recommended. And so the commercial component is staying the same, and then on the residential, they've revise the concept plan to include the larger lots as buffers, and are requesting approval of the RA2 zone. So this is the proposed concept plan. If you look on the back screen, obviously the Ridley's commercial development, if that gets approved, they would come forward with a more formal application and process. This is just meant to show you how it may lay out. It could be very different once they decide to move forward with an application. But the residential component will essentially be consistent with this plan, provided that it gets approved with the rezone today. And that shows the larger lots as buffers, and then 3rd-acre lots towards the center and to the north. And staff is recommending approval based on the planning, and is supportive of the Planning Commission's recommendation. We have a motion for you. I know there's a lot kind of going on with this, as you read in the description. So if the council is supportive of that motion, I've provided it here on the screen as you get to that point in your discussion. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Sean. Any questions for Sean?
Is lot 5 a half acre?
It's just under. I think it's 0.43 or 0.45.
I just would want it to have to be half acre.
That'd be up to the commission's recommendation. Was that they'd be approximately half acre. It's close. It's not exactly a half acre.
So they wouldn't have animal rights, the others would.
No, in the RA2 zone, actually, on new subdivisions, even if you have a half acre, you don't have animal rights.
Even over 20,000 people, I misunderstood that.
I actually stated that incorrectly at a previous meeting, and there was a member of the public that had brought it to my attention, so that's a good thing to clarify. In the RA2 zone, for new subdivisions, they don't have animal rights.
If there's no other questions for Sean, we'll open the meeting. This is a public hearing item, so we'll turn it over for public hearing comments now. If you'd like to come forward, state your name first, and then give your comments.
It's really more of a question.
Jill?
Jeanee Stewart.
Jeannie, that's right.
Jill's in Amsterdam. I'm
That's right.
representing her.
Okay, great.
It's more of a question, really. If we allow this RA2 zone, I mean, if you approve it, is there a possibility the builder could still change this and put 1/4-acre houses?
No, I don't believe so. Part of the approval tonight is based on this conceptual plan, right? And they got to stick to that, Jill?
Yeah, the recommendation that we have in the staff report is that the condition be that they follow essentially the concept plan, which would include those larger lots.
Okay. And the second question is, my husband and I are concerned about noise and trash, and so we wonder if the Ridleys would talk to us about that at some point if they come up with this plan. That's all.
Okay, great.
Yeah, because we're the ones right behind the grocery store.
Yes. Okay, thanks, Jeannie.
Thank you.
I'm Gina Harness, and I'm that way, but my biggest concern of all of this is traffic. So I'm wondering, I'm hoping that this will be a much better plan than the first one, because the traffic from the railroad backs up now, clear to my house, and it will back up clear to the light. So to me, this is a much better plan than they started with. I hope that UDOT can come up with some help that will relieve some of that pressure on that road.
Okay, great. Do you want to speak to the fence at all, Stephen?
Yeah, I can. We're on the corner of the UDOT road there, right? So UDOT's process for application would be that they would require a traffic impact study to be done on the grocery store. The residential piece we wouldn't require a traffic impact study on. It's smaller than what we typically would worry about for residential. But certainly on the commercial piece, we look for a traffic impact study. And any impact that's created would need to be mitigated as part of the approval.
Great, thanks. If there are no others, we'll close. One more.
Second question. Hi, my name is Rick Mangot. So this may be a simple answer, but TDRs.
that we need to use up TDRs here. Would this not be an opportunity to have them apply for TDR to use, to have this be a TDR receiving site as opposed to just giving you zoning?
Do you want to speak to that?
So the TDRs can't be used in the RA2 zone. RA2 zone is not an allowable TDR
So why
zone.
we not then give it a different zoning and allow the TDRs to bring it down to that density
So you couldn't do third-acre lots with TDRs
at all?
at all.
Any zoning?
Yeah, so that if you kept it, if you zoned it like the 1 acre zone, they could do half-acre lots with TDRs, but that's as far as they go.
Well, to me, that would be a pretty big consideration. We do really need to put TDR places instead of just rezoning and gifting the zoning, as opposed to allow them to kind of buy into that zoning. Personally, not a big fan of going down to third acres, but I would leave that more to the residents that live around there. If they're okay with it, then that's more important to me. But I don't know if that's something that's been thought of or proposed, that we could get use some TDRs there as well.
Okay,
Thank you.
excellent, thanks. Rick? Is there,
Hi, my name is Cheryl Lady.
Cheryl, would you
that
pull the
mic?
mic down, please?
Yes,
There we go.
I am not sure that I understand. I was under the impression that there was some part that was currently zone A2, and that they were changing that. And I'm sorry, I'm not real knowledgeable. I didn't see anything, yeah, can you go back to, okay.
That's what exists now.
So is there some question about them wanting to rezone the A2 as something different?
Yeah, that's the basis of the application. That's what was reviewed by the Planning Commission. They were requesting a high-density zone, and the Planning Commission recommended a medium-density zone. But yes, that's the whole basis for this application.
Okay, well, I don't live anywhere near there, but I guess I would just like to voice my dissent, or whatever you want to call it, whatever. There were several council members, and they ran on a platform of wanting to have lower density housing, lower density growth. I guess originally Mapleton was somewhere it talks about that their goals were to remain a low density area. Someone mentioned that they would actually like it to be like it was 10 years ago, and that we're growing at a much faster rate than we should be. I agree with both of those things. I pay pretty premium property taxes, I believe, and I feel like the reason I pay that much is because I want to be surrounded by horse pastures and quietness, and I don't want. I would like the growth to slow way down. I know that I think it was in 2009, there's an area that's just kitty corner to me. I'm assuming that it used to be A2. Someone told me that it was, in 2009, it was changed to RA2. Well, that's really too bad. I didn't live here then. I wish I had. I would have probably bought it tooth and nail, because now I'm going to have a subdivision that's going in my backyard. So kitty corners in my area, I'm going to look out my back window, and come spring, I'm going to see 13 homes. And I'm not happy about it. I feel like it devalues my property. And I wish that I had lived there in 2009. I would not have been okay with it. I do feel like, I kind of feel like that, I'm not sure that I feel like the city council really listens to what the citizens want. I feel like maybe you guys, maybe you come here and you've already got your minds made up and that this is just a formality. I don't know. I just know that I've been to several of these meetings, and I know that in one meeting, 5 or 6 of us stood up and voiced concern about why we didn't want something to happen. one person who was the person that owned the land, they stood up for it, and everybody passed it with no problem, no hesitation. So, I don't know, I just would really like the growth to slow down as much as possible. I'm not happy about anything being changed from A2 to something that's higher density, but anyway, that's all.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Brian Lambert, and the property she's talking about is my property, which was zoned 3rd acre, my west piece, over my dead body 20-some odd years ago. But, so when we applied to do this, we did it within the zone that was already there. We didn't change the zone. It was already there. And if Cheryl's gonna miss looking at it in dry, rocky pasture, that's her problem. And if she really wants to do something, she can come and buy it. Our neighbor Bill Hatfield says, Becky tells him, we love looking at your cows. He says, well, that comes with a price. That price is land ownership. If you are so adamant against any development, you should get your people together and buy everybody's property and not let anybody move in here. There's a syndrome called NIMBY, not in my backyard. Once you move in, you don't want anybody else to come. It's not happening. It's not going to work, and you can't go back 10 years. It's impossible.
Thank you, Mr.
And council, just so you know, Mr. Lambert is part of the applicant on the last item, the subdivision item, so I think that's what he was referring to.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Lambert. If there's no one else, we'll close the public hearing on this item and ask the council for a motion or clarification questions.
I don't really have any questions.
Oh, anybody have any questions for the applicant?
I just have a couple of questions, but I want to kind of address some of these issues just because I don't want to just ignore the fact that there have been concerns or comments from citizens, and I understand those citizens' comments and concerns, but I would also like to kind of tell you what goes into consideration. We don't have our minds made up when we walk in here. I've been looking at this plan and talking to our city staff and looking at different iterations of this plan and following planning commission meeting minutes for, it's been several months now in connection with this one. But fundamentally, we look at all of, there were some very good points raised tonight, points that we take into consideration. But there are also countervailing points, and I'd just like to address those a little bit as we make a decision of the city council, was touched on a little bit, and that is one of the primary issues that we have to deal with is the land ownership. Someone who owns the land has an absolute right to develop that property however they want. We don't call balls and strikes. We don't determine, okay, we want to put in, we would sure wish it wouldn't be a grocery store. So let's basically say no to a grocery store and make them put in an office complex or something to that effect. I also know that there have been, since I was first moved to Mapleton City and been on city council now for about 10 years, one of the primary concerns that I've always heard from many constituents is when are we going to get a grocery store? Or when are we going to get a tax base so that ultimately our property taxes will be able to go down and won't continue to increase each year? Those are valid and very significant concerns that others within this city have. So as we get an application that comes forward that we have to look to, we look at and we consider that there are other significant issues within this city that we're dealing with. We have no tax, but very minimal sales tax base to assist in ultimately being able to cover the costs that it takes to run the city, especially as it grows. The significant factor of we have to look at the ownership and the application that comes in, not as what we wish was going on in the city, but what the individual landowners have a right to do. They own this property, they have a right to develop it.
we can't determine and say, we wish that wasn't going on. I absolutely wish that Mapleton would stay as rural as it was when I first moved here. That's why I moved here, to have horses in my backyard. So ultimately, those are issues that we all have to deal with. And I understand, and I hope that in reviewing these things that we don't look at it and say, we're not taking into consideration citizens' concerns, because I understand your concerns. I have had some of the same concerns about developments going in with this city, but at the same time, I have to look at it. If we were to ignore those rights that a landowner has, and to do something that's contrary to the law, unfortunately, in my practice of my career, as an attorney, I've seen many multi-million-dollar verdicts against cities when they made decisions that were probably not consistent with their ordinances, but were clearly inconsistent with a property owner's rights. And we don't want that. So that's another factor that we have to take into consideration. So with that as background, I understand and I recognize that those individuals that have made comments here are important considerations that we have to consider, and we do. There's been significant changes to what the applicant has brought forward, largely because of the citizens raising concerns. Frankly, they could have come in and pushed for twin homes in this property, and likely, from the standpoint of moving forward, there was not a significant legal impediment for us to prevent that. This is from our general plan and from those things that we're dealing with. Those are circumstances that we have to look at. So there has been, I believe, a significant impact that the citizens' concerns have raised to modify this now to where we have a half-acre buffer lots, as it were, along the south and the west side. And so I will say this, I appreciate the developer trying to work and take into consideration a lot of the concerns that were raised by the citizens. But at the same time, I also recognize it's not going to make everyone happy. There are those that are going to wish, and no doubt I'm one of them, that Mapleton would remain what it was when I first moved here 20 plus years ago. But I know there's been a lot of angst in the city with respect to why is the city council pushing development? Why are we allowing development? Fundamentally, look at the rest of the county. It's going everywhere, and it's going in hard and fast. So we have to address those as they come to it. We've actually put in place a 6-month moratorium on development while we consider modifications to our general plan and get all the community and citizen input. I hope that you participate in that. We need the citizens to participate in that. All those citizens who told me and complained about not having a grocery store or a sales tax base, I'm calling those guys up, saying, remember when you complained to me about yada yada? I'm saying it's time now to step up. It's time to participate in this modification of a general plan, and let's determine to what extent we need to make changes to that general plan that's consistent with all of the community, not just those that are neighboring developments as they go in. So I apologize for getting on that, but I've been very frustrated, frankly, over the last several months when the city council have been accused of refusing to listen to citizen input. That is not the truth. It may be a perception, but it's not the truth. We do consider it, and I think this development actually indicates that has been taken into consideration. One of the questions I have about this one specifically is one of the conditions included a site obscuring fence on the 1600 South behind the residential. And as I looked at that exit on the Family Market, to me, a site obscuring fence on that lot is good. I mean, that's 1600 South, and it was raised a little bit about tonight, is a significant traffic concern. I'm just saying, that makes it a blind turn from my perspective. Have we thought about that? I mean, am I missing something there?
It isn't what the idea is, what's further down the road to the west? Across the road tracks?
I guess the only thing to say right now, Jim, is that it's so preliminary, especially for the grocery store commercial piece, that access may or may not be there. And if it is there, then absolutely we'll address the site distance issue. We will not allow a site problem there. So if the fence is the most important thing, the access will have to move. If there's something we can do with a fence to make it safe, then we'll do that. We certainly won't allow an access with the site.
And the goal of this really is if you continue down south, west or Spanish Fork, they've got the subdivisions that have homes that back up to this like this will. And the intent is just to have a consistent appearance so you don't get 3 or 4 different looking fences along that. So that's the intent of that condition. But yes, they'll have to step it down at the entrances. And this, as Stephen mentioned, may likely have to shift based on UDOT's access requirements.
And so, and I know that with the 6-foot asphalt trail, that's going to be along there as well as the planter area.
Right.
We'll give it, presumably, there'll be a little bit more of an opportunity to have a view down that road with that there. But that was my only concern is, why are if we're making that as a condition of the development, that somehow that impacts on the ability to have safety on 1600 South, because I know it's a traffic issue. So, well, as long as we're aware of that, we'll have to address it. That was the one concern I had with that condition to this approval.
Will the widths and the looks be about the same as in Spanish Fork?
Yes.
So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, the Spanish Fork area, it varies. In some places the trail is right on the curve. We don't want that. The closest example is the first subdivision you get to on the south side of the road. So if you drive across the railroad tracks, it's got a nice wall, a little planter strip, and a trail at the road. That's kind of cool.
Is the green a fence all the way around?
No, that's just highlighting the
We
parcel.
thought there was a fence behind our houses.
There's not a requirement. There will be one on the commercial. The residential zone doesn't specifically require.
Let me just, before you go on, I'll just mention one thing. I was the candidate that, confused so many people with keep Mapleton rural. And I tried to explain this. I tried to explain on my Facebook and others and meet the candidates night. And when anyone asked me that rural didn't mean cow pastures, but because it was, and I echo some of the comments that Jim made, that rural basically meant when there is an opportunity for me, like in this opportunity, when instead of having an R2B zone, we were able to convince the planning commission that just a medium density zone would be better. And so I want to also echo, and I think Jim said this too, that I think your voices are being heard, and I think that because of you and your voices being heard, that we have taken other considerations, like making sure that the general plan is being looked at, and this reasonable, I think, all these things that are being addressed because of your voices. And so I just want to say that you're being heard, and I'm really appreciative of all the comments and everyone just being vocal. I mean, because it has made a difference with us, even though sometimes it's a little frustrating and maybe may be accused of not listening. But that was my whole point, is that I wanted to listen and say that I was listening, because that was what you were voicing about, keeping rural. And I tried to make that more clear. Just wanted to say that.
All right, thanks. One thing, I'll address a few of the comments. I'm not sure it was addressed through those comments, but one comment that I've heard multiple times is Mapleton's growing too fast, and I don't like it. Right? A lot of the actual plats that come through, that get signed, that get recorded, don't request zone changes. So if you feel that it's growing too fast, then you need to go, like Mr. Lambert said, go talk to those property owners and ask them not to develop them because they have a right to develop them. That's just a fact of the matter. So there's nothing humanly possible that the city can do to stop the developments from going through in that scenario. I just want to make sure we all understand that process. Otherwise, it wouldn't be America, because you wouldn't have that right, which that's the whole reason this country was founded, was for property rights. And one of our whole responsibilities is to protect that right. Also, on the grocery stores, so you understand, when there's certain uses, I read a whole bunch of emails that came to the city regarding the grocery store, and a lot of people opinion saying, number one, it won't work because it won't make it. Number two, and they had all these reasons why, right, for other cities around, and Ridley's had opened here and they're not there now, and this and that. And I've heard all these things, read all these things on emails, and then they also saying no one wants it. Well, in this zone, for example, in the city, there's approved uses in the commercial zone. So if the city allows for certain permitted uses in the zone, and the property owner owns the property in a zone, then you can't tell them they can't build a grocery store. If that's private business, again, then it wouldn't be America, right? If someone believes they can make a business work, it's not the city's responsibility to tell them that the business isn't going to work. The city shouldn't be involved in that. That's not a city responsibility. So if someone owns the property and it's a permitted use in the zone and they apply for it like this and want to build it, they have every right to do it. There's no one in the city that's going to stop them. There's no one's going to get voted on city council that's going to stop them. That's just totally ridiculous. And another thing, after everything that's going on, and as hard as we've worked to get this land use element on the general plan to where it is today, which, by the way, has never been done in the history of the city this way, which I believe is the only way to do it, the right way to do it, a non-biased third-party company that's done literally hundreds of them in the state of Utah and knows very well what they're doing. And having all the infrastructure studies we've done in the last 2 years that allow us to get to this point, which have never been done in the history of the city, by the way. All of this work has been done for someone to stand at that pulpit and tell me that the city council is not listening is totally self-interested, in my opinion. That's my opinion, but I'm stating my opinion. It's ridiculous. The amount of work that's going on, and then on top of that, the amount of work and conversation and trying to figure out what the best thing to do is on something like this, and find something that's amenable and ask for neighborhood meetings and attend neighborhood meetings and other things. I mean, if you're going to stand up here and say that, in my opinion, that's what I believe it is. So, if you do feel differently, I'd love to have a conversation with you, and we can go back and forth. With that being said, if there are any other questions or comments?
I had a couple of questions. I think the homes on the west, some of them have septic tanks. Will the sewer allow into all these homes, or will there be some septic tanks?
No, they'll have to be on sewer.
So,
But the sewer isn't there.
So all of the new development will be on the city sewer.
so that means surrounding lines with a different elevation.
Yeah, so that's going to work. But the homes that exist right now that are on septic, they won't be connected to the public.
Okay.
But these ones will.
Can I say one more thing? I'm in that area, and I have been to 2 or 3 meetings, and I think the council has really listened to us well.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate
Thanks.
that. So.
Thank you, appreciate that. Any other questions?
Facebook wouldn't believe that, but thank you.
Well, I'm not on Facebook every day, but they've listened. So.
You have to understand, there's only a few homes around the edge of that.
Sure.
Also, I was trying to remember, how many homes are allowed in an area where there's only one exit?
Maximum 30, so this is 25.
30. Okay, I couldn't remember what that number was, so it was 30. Would there be an opportunity for us to consider this to be RA1 with TDR overlays and use up some TDRs, which we need to do?
That's a position the council could take, yes, you could have that. It would impact the concept plan as it's currently shown, because they'd all would have to be at least half an acre.
So that would take 20 TDRs.
It depends on how many they ultimately got in there, so it would be 1 TDR for every 2 half-acre lots.
Any other questions?
Let's just see where this goes. Make a motion to adopt an ordinance approving an amendment of the general plan from SCC to rural residential to SCC and medium density residential, and the zoning from GC1, NC1, A2, and A2 TDR receiving to GC1 and RA2 as described in Exhibit A, with the conditions outlined in the staff report dated today.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Nelson, and a second by Councilman Lundberg.
Just I think it's a discussion on the motion. Is that possible?
Any question about it?
I agree with one, but I think the other one might maybe could be considered. I'm kind of thinking we ought to maybe look at the TDR. In fact, the grocery stores maybe change, but so we're changing two areas of zones. Is that what we're doing?
Well, we don't right now. What's
They're two
before us?
independent. They're two independent lots, right?
Yeah,
So they're on the same motion.
correct.
Because they made one application.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we have to accept the application as it is, from the standpoint of.
I follow you.
Yeah.
You say one application.
Okay.
And that, I mean, this is going to sound ruder than I don't mean it as rude. That's their prerogative. If they could come in with separate applications, but because the way that they have made the application, we have to accept it as is. Hands are tied.
I guess Carlson, no.
Nelson, yes.
Lundberg, yes.
Hansen, yes.
All right. Thank you, Sean. We'll move to item number 6, consideration of an ordinance approving a rezone of approximately 9 acres of property located 2400 south of Highway 89 to a mix of general commercial and industrial manufacturing, and to amend the general plan to include general commercial designation for a portion of the property. Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just one quick point. So the application before this and the next two were the last 2 or the last 3 that applied before the moratorium went into effect. So
And
that's
there was something said earlier, you just clarified the moratorium is for zone changes.
for zone changes. Okay, so this property is about 9 acres in size. It's what has commonly been known as the Olson Sheep Farm, or at least a portion of it. It includes a single-family dwelling and several agricultural buildings. The corner piece is already zoned general commercial, but the remaining 8 acres is zoned A2. So the applicant is requesting to extend that general commercial along the highway an additional 2.2 acres. And then the portion that's between the highway and the train tracks to zone that industrial and manufacturing.
There's not much else to do.
So this is the existing zoning map. It shows the corner piece is commercial. You'll see 3 of the pieces across the street are already in that general commercial zone as well. And then the remainder is in the industrial. This is the train tracks that runs on its western boundary. The current general plan designation is industrial, but you can see again on the other side of the street, up and down the highway, it's also in the surrounding areas is general commercial along that stretch. So this is what they would be proposing. So the front section would be the general commercial area, and the western section would be the industrial. They have included a concept plan that shows some potential building layouts. The applicant has indicated, though there's not a project that they're proposing, you can ask the applicant to expound on that, but I believe the intent is basically to be able to get the zoning in place so that they can then go market it to people who are interested in commercial or industrial projects. They've included some elevations or just some photos of buildings that may be something that's feasible. This would be like a light manufacturing. The Planning Commission reviewed the application and determined that this rezone request was appropriate based on the configuration of the site and the limited other options for it. The Commission liked the idea of having commercial along the highway with the industrial to the west. One of the concerns that was raised during the Planning Commission's review, though, was some of the neighbors that live to the east were concerned about potential for 24/7 type retail uses. I don't think something like that would go in this far south, but the concern was raised and the Commission agreed that they wanted to make sure that there wasn't.
What's an example of a 24/7 retail?
Just like a fast food restaurant, something like that. And so the Commission recommended approval, but with the condition that you would not allow any 24/7 retail operations at that location. And staff's comfortable with the Planning Commission's recommendation. Another option that you do have is, because there isn't a specific project yet, you could continue the application until there is a more formal proposal. That's certainly within your prerogative to do that. I think from the challenging part from an owner of commercial and industrial property is it's difficult to get a project online if there's somebody interested until the zoning is in place, right? It's more challenging to do that than it is on residential property. But if that's something you feel more comfortable doing, the zone change, when you had a specific project in mind, that's a position you certainly can take. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. The applicant's here as well, they can speak more to the proposal.
Any questions for Sean? It's a public hearing item. So we'll open it up for public hearing now. If you have comments, please come forward, state your name first. Seeing that there aren't any, we'll close public hearing. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
I kind of have a general question. I think we have another next agenda item. How close are these two together? Does that fill out that whole area?
It does, yeah. The next application is the rest of the piece.
Goes down the railroad tracks in
I
essence.
assumed that it did, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, it's everything on that west side.
So then basically, eventually, if both are approved, both all basically.
Correct. It would match what that general plan designation was for that area.
Make a motion.
So tell me again, the current zone, okay.
So it used to be, that was the boundary,
Yeah.
and there was this, for the property to the north, they had this small 60-foot stretch that was A2, with RA2 to the west. And so it appeared to us that the intent originally was to match, usually zoning boundaries follow property lines. And so they had requested just to shift that boundary to make it where originally most likely was intended to be. So that blue line is where the new zoning boundary is, and it matches this property line of these two properties to the north.
Right, I remember doing that, but I don't, I'm just trying to see what that looks like, because those knuckles on that go into the A2.
Yeah, so the line is right there. So right down the center line of the road.
Okay, that's helpful.
Who owns the property just to the north? There's a long, narrow strip there. It did look, back on the other map, I assume it's not owned by somebody.
So they own,
In the red and the black.
they own all the way to here.
On the north, that's.
Oh, you're talking in here?
That strip.
That's a gap, so they'll be needing to make an agreement to identify exactly where that barrier is.
Well, that's one of those things that all over Mapleton.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that a little bit. So,
You got to.
Any other questions for Sean?
So right now, there's no exit up at this top, just this one right here.
correct.
Is that right?
But eventually that'll work its way out to
And is that home access from this knuckle? Well,
Yeah.
access
Yep.
from right there.
Don't we have a dead-end road, standard or minimum? Is that what this is considered?
Cul-de-sac length we do, not, as long as you're stubbing the road and there's
Oh, that's right. So
emergency
it's a quantity
turnarounds.
of lot. It's a quantity of lots, 19. Gotcha.
And you think that knuckle's big enough to have like a turnaround if needed without, I guess, fire truck or?
Yes.
Looks like that could be done in lieu of speed bumps, doesn't it?
It's just nice it's
It
not a
kind
habit.
of makes sense though, to be able to drive through and not have a cul-de-sac.
It certainly slows. What happened originally, there was a proposal that had, I think, 2 cul-de-sacs, and we wanted to avoid the cul-de-sacs, and so this was the design. And actually makes for a little more interesting neighborhood and slows traffic down.
Make a motion to approve resolution approving the preliminary plat for the Dallin subdivision consisting of 13 lots, approximately 1,400 east, 1,200 north in the A2 and RA2 zones as outlined in the proposal.
I'll second the motion.
Motion by Councilman Nelson, a second by Councilman Carlson.
Carlson, yes.
Nelson, yes.
Lundberg, yes.
Hansen, yes.
All right. Thanks, Sean. We'll now turn the time over for administrative reports. We can start with Sean.
Sure. Main announcement is for everybody here. Tomorrow is the first public meeting for the general plan update. It's called a scoping meeting. The consultant will be here at 6 o'clock. We're starting. They're going to do some, they'll lead the discussion, but the main issue that they're wanting is just to hear from the public. What are your concerns related to land use and parks and recreation? So we're not going to be discussing solutions, but they're going to be discussing what are the issues so that they hear it from the community and are able to include that when they begin their analysis.
Sean, maybe shed some light on the webpage they have and how that.
Yeah, so ourmapleton.org is the main project website, so we encourage you to go there if you haven't already. You can sign up to be on the email list for announcements. It includes posts regarding what upcoming meetings are coming and project status.
And tomorrow night's meeting, the hope is that you come right at 6 o'clock. It's not like somewhere you have this open house where you're coming and going. You're hoping at 6 it starts and good discussions throughout that evening, but if you can, 6 o'clock on.
We're paying a lot of money for it, so please show up.
I might mention that it's not a presentation, it's just a forum for them, for you to give your input. It's not to give you information, it's for you to give the group information.
Yep, they'll do some things to get engagement going, but they want to listen. One other quick item, I just wanted to bring this to your attention, maybe something that comes to you in the future. Dallas may know a little bit about this one. This is you were talking about gaps and overlaps and issues that we have. This is 8th West, and this is 12th South. This property owner came to us a little while ago. When this house was originally built, the city required a right-of-way dedication, which is this area highlighted. But now that 12th South has been at least partially built on both sides of it, it's clear that this dedication is not in the right place. And so we're going to work with the applicant to get that corrected. It may mean that we deed back or vacate a portion of that back to the property owner. He just wanted to make sure that before he goes through the work of surveys and getting the title company involved, that he just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to require him to purchase that area.
Oh, yeah.
So,
And Jared to the south's okay with that, right?
yeah, we're working with both property owners. So
Derek, you want to do that?
just a heads up on that. That's all I had.
Thank you, Sean. Stephen?
Okay, I'm gonna do my best Corey impression. I got 2 items for you. So the first one is the citizen problem reporter that we talked about a while ago. That is now live. We put it on the website. We're going to do a little bit more outreach through social media and things like that, but it's up and running. We got our first comment on that last weekend. It came in on a Saturday, and we already taken care of it, so it was awesome. So again, that's kind of for everyone. So if you guys can spread the word on that, get it out there. We really are interested to find out about the things that we just missed. And, you know, there's not enough of us to drive around all day and find all of the potholes and all the broken pieces of curb, and we need to know they're there. So that's hopefully what that's for. Second item is, this is just a really quick update on where we are with the Spanish Fork Sewer Treatment Plant. We talked a little bit a while ago about how we've done an RFP for a consultant to do a master plan for the new plant. That consultant is JV Engineering with Stantec as a sub-consultant. JV is going to do the civil design work. Stantec's going to do the treatment process work. They are, I believe, now under contract, and we're working out scoping and schedule and things like that with them. So it's not a whole lot to update you on yet, other than that's moving forward, and within the next month or two, we're going to see some firmer plans on what they want to do down there and how it'll come with the costs and things like that. So we'll probably have a deeper discussion on that this week.
I think we're meeting with them next week, I believe.
Yeah, we do.
As well as I spoke with Spanish Fork, and one of the things that I'd asked them to do is let's try to work together as they send newsletters out to their citizens. We'll do that simultaneously so that both groups are familiar with what's taking place with that. So
Start asking for donations too.
Yeah. That's it.
And just to note, this is affecting every city throughout the state of Utah. So I meet with city managers. This is a topic that every city's experiencing right now, and they're all about the same process as we are, just trying to get everything compiled and put together as they then start reaching out to their communities and letting them know the time frames and et cetera.
That's a mandate by the state to reduce phosphates, or I think we need to.
Yeah, the EPA.
Yeah, I mean, it's a legal requirement we have to make.
Thanks, Mr. Rowe.
Okay, mine are really quick. This should have happened years ago, but the animal shelter finally has dog registrations online. So that link's on our website so people can register their dogs online. Probably should have happened years ago, but it didn't. So here we are. If you guys get people talking about their dogs, we really would like to make a push and have dogs registered. Don't really like taking them to the shelter. It's easier to look up a number and take it back to a house and deal with that. Second thing is, I never really thought to bring this up to you guys until I was approached by a citizen down at the gas station, and he asked why some of our officers are wearing a vest on the outside of their uniform with their equipment on. And I hadn't really thought about that much, but he made the comment that he thought it looked kind of military. And it does have that look to it. So I want to explain to you kind of why they're doing that. The recent trend in law enforcement is to get the weight of their equipment off their hips, off the belt, and up here where it's more evenly distributed. Their gun is still on their belt, their radio is still on their belt, but their handcuffs, their other stuff, tasers, things are up on their vest. So it is kind of bulky. It does look a little bit intimidating. Not a big fan of that, but the reason why is the research, and I am on board with this, research is showing is healthier for their lower backs and hips. So that's why the guys are wearing those, if you're asked. I never thought to really tell you until somebody asked me about it, so I thought I'll mention it. So
I just thought they wanted to look intimidating.
Since you made that change, things have been a lot calmer, Chief.
Why don't you put up around their neck and see if it calms down more?
One thing you didn't mention, Chief, is the news article that came out that you probably read about Chief Glasgow. That's an awesome thing. Theron's part of that. Thank you, Theron, everyone and Chief, all the hard work. It goes without saying, but at the same time, they don't get enough thank you from us. I don't think that the amount of work that goes in, which also, as you read in the article, could possibly lower insurance rates for your insurance company that you get home insurance from. So huge steps for them. And Chief, thanks for all your work, because I know it's what you guys are going through, and it's hard work, and we appreciate it.
That I assume is exemplary. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chief.
So, just need to give Stacy bedtime. She got off really easy with the consent agenda. And being on the most important tree committee, and as you know, that this will be my last couple of months, I would really like to see a plan for some trees, more trees in our parks. And that would be really nice. That's all I have.
Thanks, Scott. Reid.
Mike mentioned relative to the solid waste, the transfer station, the landfill, et cetera. The plan is going ahead well with the engineering firm on the transfer station, the new one in Spanish Fork. And we have signed an agreement now to sell the property that all they have in Springville. It's going to be sequential, so we have full use of the property until we can relinquish it. It was a significant amount of money that should fairly well cover the cost and expense we're going to have with the other facility. So far, so good in that regard.
For those, what Reid's is, for those that don't know, is referring to the solid waste station, the dump in Springville, where by Love's gas station is being moved. The property is being sold and a new state-of-the-art facility is being built on North Spanish Fork Main Street, south of the retail on the west side of Main Street. So it's been going on for discussions for a couple of years. They finally pulled the trigger, and that's what he's referring to. They're going to dispose of that property. I think they aren't going to get near what they're asking for, but I gave my 2 cents. Because that's part of the pro forma, right? They build a pro forma and say, here's how we're going to pay for it and all that, and then they say, we want to sell land for it. But anyway, there's a board that votes on that. That's done. So thanks, Reid. One thing that I have, I'll just mention, obviously, we're all probably watching this closely, but with the elections and the results coming in, I want to congratulate those that have, or they're won or going to win, it appears so, and also thank those that have served, Scott and Mike and Jonathan, and based on things that have happened and comments that have been made, and I'm sure those of you that have done the process and ran and done it, it's not all that it's made out to be. It's you got to go home for a while and pull all the daggers out of your back and everywhere else now, and kind of clean up, lick your wounds, and get ready to go to work, because we got a lot of work to do. And I'll thank Mike and Jonathan and Scott for the service. Say what you want about them, but they sat up here and they went through the hard work and put the time in, and we want to thank them for that. So thank you. Mike.
The only thing I have is the Scarecrow Festival. It was, did I steal your thunder?
No, go right ahead, it's even better coming from you.
It was awesome. It's a great event. The Parks and Rec staff it was awesome. The volunteers. It was just a great event and a lot of fun. And it's fun to see it growing and starting to become part of the culture. So thank you to everyone who was there. Thanks to the departments. I think, was it the police? Who won? Was it the police? I can't remember.
Oh, the fire department chief. I was going to say, hey, chief.
Not that I'm bothered by it.
They said, come over to us. Come over us.
Vote early, vote often, Chicago style. Anyways, it was a great event, and if you don't go, you need to go. It's just really fun, and it's a little Mapleton flavor in the middle of the fall. So thank you to everybody.
Just to note, I sound like the fire chief's son dressed up as a police officer for Halloween.
Let's make that real clear. I've got pictures to prove it. We're ahead and go about that.
Thanks, Mike. Jim.
I don't have anything, thanks.
Stacy.
So just wanted to let Councilman Hansen know that we do have plans to plant some more trees at Ira Allen Park this spring. So we're excited about that. Also, thank you, Mike, for the speech about the Scarecrow Fest. It was a really great event, and one that we love to put on. The month of October was a busy one. We had that one, as well as we had our day of service that involved the entire community, doing service throughout the community, and wanted to thank the council for their support in that. That's a great event. They hold one during the spring and the fall for cleanup, and I think It's just well attended, and we have a lot of really positive feedback from the community for that. And that's put on through, now I can't think,
Just Serve.
Just Serve. So, but it's all members in the community helping. And
In fact, there was even some Mapleton citizens that went down and helped out Elbridge drain some of the sandbags that they had. There were people that just showed up and just helped do that. And Elbridge is like, why would you want to help us? It's like, well, if you've been down on Mount Loafer Road, it is, somewhat looks like a war zone with Jersey barriers and sandbags all over. So there's a lot of work to be done, just people just stepping out of their skin and doing some good for people.
Thanks for leading that, Mike.
thank you. Also, if you've been by the city park, the historical square is underway. There's been some construction going on. The Relief Society building has been framed, and they'll hopefully be beginning to put brick on that in the next couple of weeks, as well as pouring foundations for the 2 other buildings. So it's really exciting. It's moving along, and great support from the community on that. Also, the Mapleton Grove Park is they're laying sod down there this week. They've also begun construction on the 2 pickleball courts that'll be there. So that park is going in, which is really exciting.
That's north of the DR apartment.
Right.
It's in. I just drove by it.
It's in. I was there yesterday, and it was going in. So I'm really excited about it. So that's to be a great asset for the community is when it is finished. And then last but not least, we have another great festival coming up. That's our Christmas festival, our tree lighting. That's going to be December 2nd, and it should be a really fun event again.
Will we be ready?
What?
Will we be ready?
We will be ready. It's going to be awesome, and we're going to be ready. But want to invite the community out to that. We'll be having our wreath auction again. If the community is interested in donating wreaths, I do a silent auction for those, and all the money goes to Sub for Santa through the fire department. It helps local families in our community, as well as we'll have Santa there and s'mores and food trucks, lots of fun going on. So just want to put that on your calendars. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Stacy. Speaking of committees, we just so that you know, you're aware, we have several committees that have been formed that are hard at work now. One is the steering committee as part of this land use element that works directly with Landmark, and they'll have meetings that in conjunction with these public meetings. The other committee is an internet committee where we've been working on resolving our embarrassing internet in the city, and we've got verbal commitments to get it done, and we've formed a committee that has people from all over the city in it that a lot of them work for the bigger companies, Vivint Smart Home and Novell, and they're tech guys and know what internet's all about and what good internet is and what it's not. And so anyway, we're working with our neighboring city, Spanish Fork City. It's actually to expand the Spanish Fork City Community Network, which is their internet piece, which is 100% fiber. And so we're close to getting a deal done there, and the committee's helping vet it and make sure that we get it right. We're just doing it a similar way the Spanish Fork actually started, and taking advice from them. They're very successful at it. They've been almost 20 years, and so that's super exciting.
And just to know, that process obviously has to come before you as a council for approval, and one of the things we'll be looking at is a feasibility study, so that you'll have a report coming to you to say, hey, this is what our community could use, and those type of things. So, okay.
Yeah, so we'll have more discussion about that. We're trying to do right now is before we waste our time going that far, that we vet it and make sure that's something that will service us the right way. And then obviously the council's got to give their blessing on it.
So Patrick, you could run us in high def.
Okay, Camille.
I just, to let you know, we do have to do our election canvass, so you can't do it any sooner than 7 days, but no longer than 14, so that lands on the 19th of November. So we were going to move our council meeting the 20th to the 19th, but we have decided we don't have any items for that night, so we won't do our council meeting, but I just need to do my canvass. So I just need 3 of you. We can even do it like at 5 o'clock to just get that done.
Either on the 18th or 19th?
Yeah, we can do the 8th.
So,
well, the county's not going to have their numbers to me.
So 19th, so Tuesday the 19th.
I'll be out of town on the 19th.
Just let me know what time. Anytime before 7.
Would you prefer like a 5 o'clock? 5?
I should be around.
Okay.
5 is fine.
Okay. Scott, Jim, check your schedules and just let us know. But let's select around.
But 5 would be a little bit early for me. I could 6, so.
It doesn't get dark till 6, so Jim won't be able to stop his hunting early. 6:30?
Unfortunately, some of them are real jobs.
6 o'clock, 6 o'clock work for you, Jim?
What's that?
6 o'clock would work for you?
I can make 6 o'clock, if need be.
Yeah, I can make 6.
Tuesday the 19th at 6 o'clock.
Work for you, Scott?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, let's do that. Thank you.
So there's no meeting on the 20th?
No meeting on the 20th. So our next scheduled meeting would be then Wednesday, December the 4th. If everything goes good, we'll probably, that'll be part of the meeting that month as well. But the other scheduled one was December 18th.
Okay, thanks, Mel. All right, Corey.
My checklist is done. Let's go home. They covered everything, so. Thank you.
Really?
I'm good.
I thought you were joking.
Yeah, I'm good.
That's awesome. Okay, motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn by Councilman Nelson. All in favor? Second by Lambert.
Yes.
All right.